Emily stared at the ceiling, wide awake once again. The clock read 3:17 a.m. The witching hour, and the oppressive silence in her apartment was only broken by the faint hum of the refrigerator. But to Emily, the silence wasn't comforting. It was suffocating. That's when she heard it, just barely, like someone whispering right next to her ear. "Emily!" She jolted upright, her heart pounding in her chest. Her eyes darted around the room, but there was no one there. Nothing but the shadows cast by the dim glow of her bedside lamp. The voice, so soft and fleeting, had vanished, leaving only the eerie silence. Emily pressed her hands to her temples, trying to shake off the sensation. It had started weeks ago. First, there were strange whispers, fleeting and low, impossible to catch. Then shadows began shifting in her peripheral vision. Every time she turned her head, there was nothing there, but she could feel it. Something was watching her. Desperate for answers, Emily visited the library, hoping to distract herself with research, psychology books, anything that might explain her deteriorating state. The library was ancient, filled with the smell of aged paper and dust, but there was something off about the place, something that gnawed at Emily's nerves. The librarian, an old, frail woman with cold, calculating eyes, seemed to know something. She barely spoke, but when Emily approached her, she could feel the woman's gaze, piercing and unnerving, as if she could see right through her. As Emily flipped through the books on psychological disorders and hallucinations, the whisper came again. Only this time it was louder, clearer. "You can't escape." Emily's heart raced. She looked around, but no one was there. The librarian sat at her desk, unmoving, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling that the voice wasn't just in her head anymore. As the days went on, Emily's world became more nightmarish. She'd find objects in strange places, her keys in the freezer, books turned upside down, lights flickering at random. Her reflection in the mirror sometimes didn't quite match her movements, a slight delay in her eyes. It was as if reality was warping around her. The whispers had grown louder, more insistent, and the shadows. They weren't just in the corners anymore. They followed her, grew closer, twisting into shapes that resembled figures lurking just behind her. She'd feel cold, like someone's breath was against her neck, but when she spun around, there was nothing. Sleep became impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt the sensation of someone standing over her bed, watching, waiting. Her friends thought she was losing her mind, and maybe she was. The memories Emily had worked so hard to bury were starting to resurface. In her dreams, she was a child again, standing outside the old, abandoned house on the edge of town. Her parents had warned her never to go there, but she couldn't resist. In the dreams, she'd see the tall figure that haunted her childhood, the one with hollow eyes that watched her from the cracked windows. It had terrified her then, and it terrified her now. Her fascination with that house had faded as she grew older, but now, in the chaos of her collapsing mind, it all made sense. She had left something behind in that house. Or worse, something had followed her out. The realization hit her like a punch in the gut. The figure, the whispers, the shadows. It had never left. It had been waiting for her all these years, lurking in the darkest corners of her mind. On a sleepless night, Emily decided to return to the old house. The closer she got, the louder the whispers became. The shadows seemed to ripple around her, growing darker and more menacing. Her heart raced, but she knew there was no turning back. This was where it all started, and where it had to end. As she stepped into the decaying house, the floorboards groaned under her weight. The air was thick with dust and the smell of rot. The figure from her dreams stood in the corner of the room, tall and still. It was faceless, a dark void that radiated pure terror. The whispers grew deafening. Emily screamed, demanding to know what it wanted. The figure didn't move, but she felt a cold, creeping sensation wash over her, sinking deep into her bones. And then, everything went silent. The figure wasn't real. The terror was coming from within her. She was the one who had created the nightmare, her mind twisted by trauma and fear. But realizing that didn't make it stop. Emily collapsed to her knees, her body trembling. The shadows, the whispers, they were all part of her, manifestations of the terror and trauma she had repressed for so long. Her mind had been torturing her, using her darkest fears against her. But even now, as she sat in the empty house, she could feel it, the shadows still clinging to her, the whispers still murmuring in her ear. She wasn't free. She could never be free. The horror was in her, a part of her, and it would follow her wherever she went. The figure faded into the darkness, but its presence remained. The house had given her answers, but not peace. Emily realized the truth. Her mind was a prison, and the nightmares would never stop. Have you ever experienced the feeling that your mind is working against you? What's scarier? Something lurking in the dark, or the horrors inside your own mind? Share your thoughts and stories in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more spine-chilling tales.